And hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of Chapters here on Armstrong Television. Chapters is the television show that profiles authors, editors, and publishers in West Virginia, Ohio, and Kentucky. I'm Eliot Parker, and it's great to have you with us. We are talking romance writing and all things associated with romance writing today here on this episode of Chapters with local author Tobi Doyle, who was born in Massachusetts. She grew up in California, lived in Texas, Indiana, and finally settled in West Virginia 7 years ago. She's a happily married mother of three and even happier that she's almost an empty nester. After spending years teaching middle school science, her husband encouraged her to retire her red pens and follow her passion of writing, and she's never regretted 1 minute of it. Tobi is a PAN member of the Romance Writers of America, as well as the Special Events Director of Passionate Inc., an RWA online chapter. Her first book, Rebound Baby, was a semifinalist in the Passionate Inc. chapter contest. Passionate Plume and its sequel, Rebound Baby 2, was a semifinalist in the Stiletto contest from the Greater Detroit RWA. The next book in the series, Rebound Babies, which we'll talk about here a little bit later on, is scheduled for release this summer. She and her writing partner, Rebecca Beret, who also is a Huntington native, has two books published with Burroughs Publishing Group, Imperfect, and a Christmas novella called Good Hair Days. They met at a NaNoWriMo write and sponsored by the Cabell County Public Library a few years ago, and both serve on the board of the Wicked Wordsmiths of the West. And this has been a great year for Tobi because her manuscript, Adriana's Avenging Angel, has been purchased by Harlequin Desire and is scheduled to be released in March of 2017. And she's represented by Laura Bradford of Bradford Literary Agency. And we are delighted to have a very talented and accomplished writer and author with us here today. So Tobi Doyle, welcome to Chapters. I was so glad to have you here today.
Well, thank you, Eliot. I'm very glad you asked.
I'm really interested about romance writing because we haven't had too many romance writers on the program, but I wanted to ask you before we get into your book specifically about romance writing. And I got some information from the Book Expo of America, which was held in Chicago this spring of 2016. And for 5 years in a row, the number one selling genre of book nationwide was romance, followed by mystery and thriller was second, and science fiction and fantasy was third. So those trends have stayed pretty consistent over the last 5 years. So my question is, you write in this genre and read a lot in this genre. What has been the staying power, or what is the staying power of romance writing? Why is it so popular? Why does, with everything going on with all the different kinds of books that are out there now, why do people keep coming back and buying and reading romance?
Well, romance is one of the few genres that it's a huge umbrella term for. You can have romantic suspense, romantic mysteries, you can have historicals, and so whatever your passion is, you can find a romance. The draw to romance, of course, is that it has a happily ever after. And for the average person out there who's working a very difficult job and dealing with family and children and work things, it's nice to just come home, relax, and enjoy a happily ever after. And if you pick up a romance, you are guaranteed that that is going to be the end. So it's comforting and it's fun and flirty, and there's so many different kinds and so many amazingly talented authors out there. So it's a great story and a guaranteed happy.
So when you got into this process of writing romance novels, who were some writers that you look back to for inspiration, and who are some writers that you currently read that inspire you a lot to continue writing in this genre?
Okay, so I would say the author who put the foot in my butt, as it were, to just say, you know what, I really want to do this, would be Kristen Proby. And she started off, like myself, as an independently published author, and then she got a deal with Simon & Schuster, and she's been working with Simon & Schuster and Penguin and has just had this amazing career. I also love Tessa Bailey. She is very funny. Stephanie Bond, she's hilarious too. I love the lighter-hearted romances. Karen Marie Moning is amazing. She's had a very long career. She writes paranormal romances that are set in sort of a contemporary world with the paranormal spin, and the worlds she builds, the writing, it's absolutely exquisite. And Courtney Milan, I mean, if you want to read a historical, that's your go-to person. She's just amazing. I don't know, they're just fabulous. I really enjoy them.
So when someone goes to a bookstore, picks up a romance book, and sits down to read it, what are some of the characteristics that they should expect? I know you mentioned a moment ago that there's different types and different sort of subgenres. You've got the cozy romance, and you've got sort of the mystery thriller romance and the erotica romance.
Yeah.
But in general terms, or generally speaking, when someone picks up the romance book or a romance book, what can they expect in terms of format, characters involved, and those kinds of things?
The heart of the romance is definitely the relationship between the couple, and of course, in this day and age, it can be male, 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 female, male, female, male. I mean, you can throw the whole quilt bag out there, but really, it's about watching those characters grow emotionally and then grow emotionally together. So typically, they have their own issues personally, and then together they grow and overcome those issues and have their happily ever after.
That's terrific. So I know that people love to read books where there are dynamic characters, and they like to see characters grow. And we do, I think, see that in a lot of romance, that sometimes they grow in the positive way, sometimes they grow in a negative way, and sometimes that other person that's involved impacts how they grow and change as the story unfolds. So I want to talk to you about your upcoming book, and I had a chance to read this. Got a hot off the press, right off the computer screen copy, which I appreciate. So tell us a little bit about this book, about what's going on in this story, and what readers can expect when they pick up a copy of Rebound Babies.
Well, definitely some very hot and steamy situations. But I loved the idea. Melinda Noonan is a kind of a very carefully put together person. She spent her whole life with her plan and her schedule, and it's been going great. And the one night she decides to just let her hair down and go crazy, she has the worst sexual encounter of her life and ends up pregnant with triplets. So she wants nothing to do with the father, and he's thrilled to death that she lets him out. So she's now, throughout the book, growing as a person, learning to accept that her highly organized schedule life is no more, and what is she going to do about it? And she meets the hero, Mike Salvatore, who seems to have all the answers. And whether or not she's willing to let him into her life is the struggle that they have in that book.
And I think Mike Salvatore is a great character, and he's a guy that when we meet him after what happens at the beginning, you really want to root for him, and you want to root for him and her to get together and for it to end up positively in that regard. But going back to the first romance, what happened prior to the pregnancy? How did those two characters meet? And I don't want to make you give too much away, but how did those two characters meet, and then at what point did they decide to go their separate ways? Was it the pregnancy that did it, or was it one of those, oops, we've been together, now I realize it was a terrible mistake?
It was supposed to be just a one night stand. So she went into it with her, schedule, like, I'm just going to have fun tonight, and he's kind of cute, and we're having a good time, and just that. Not quite a Tinder hookup, but it's just was meant to be a hookup. And as I said, it wasn't, although they seemed to have a lot in common before the event, before the sex, they clearly did not click. So she knew that she didn't want to have him in her children's lives, and he did not want to didn't want to take responsibility for it. So she was more than happy to let him go.
I wanted to read just a little bit from chapter 1, if I may, of Rebound Babies, because I think this is something you do in a lot of your books that I really like. You open up chapter 1 by saying, "Thank God Skype had the little window where you could monitor your reaction," Melinda thought. She managed to keep her face neutral, even appear bored, as her mother informed her that her high school boyfriend was now married. And I noticed that you do that a lot in your books, is you kind of drop the reader right in the middle of a situation.
Yeah.
And immediately we tend to find out a character's name and a location where they are, but then we as the reader have to kind of find out, okay, what's going on here?
Sure.
Is that something that you developed as a writer? Is that something that pops up in romance writing quite a bit?
Yes. You have, especially with Amazon, the way it's set up today, and most people, and actually a lot of romance readers prefer ebooks because they don't want the hot, bare-chested guy, while they're out there at the pool. So a lot of them, you've got that sample that you can read, So that's about 4,000 words. And if you don't hook the reader in the first 4,000 words, you're not going to be downloaded. You won't be read. So you really have to start with something that draws the reader in and gets them attached and rooting for the person, and you want that hook in there. I think that's probably true for any book, not just romance, but romance writers, we definitely know that's where we have to start, is you got to pull them in, because there's so many romance books out there. It's a huge industry.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I just did a search this afternoon before we taped the program on romance books, and I was amazed. I think I just typed in romance in Amazon, and there was something like 78 or 88,000 that just popped up immediately. And I didn't broaden the category. I didn't put, cozy romance or erotic. I just typed in romance, and I was amazed at how many books were out there. So I guess to some degree you're in a little bit of a competition, because anybody can write romance, and because of Amazon and these other self-publishing platforms, Smashwords and whatever, they can just put those right up there. So you're kind of in a crowded field, I think.
Yes, definitely. So I think the best thing that can be out there is, if you like an author, leave a review, because readers look at the reviews. So I strongly urge readers to please leave a review. And I know as a reader, and I read a lot, that's the first thing I do, is go through and see, who liked it, why they didn't like it. I think one of the best examples of that is, there's a very funny book out right now called Me-ternity, and it's by Harlequin, an author at Harlequin, and it is getting slammed because feminists have gone on to review the book, but it's not a book written for feminists. It's a fluffy romance. And so it kind of cracks me up that, this book is going to be thrown away while it's brilliantly written, because of the reviews. So if you like a book, review it. If you hate a book, review it. If you feel, maybe not review it.
Yeah. And I know, as a writer myself, and you probably feel this way too, I like to see the occasional negative review. I think if I see all positive reviews, and I see where everybody loves it, then I get a little bit worried as the writer, because I think, well, are these reviews sincere? I mean, but at the same time, you don't want all negative reviews, or you know that there's a problem.
Well,
but I think that balance is good.
The negative review, when you read the negative review and the person says, well, this was just horrible, I cannot believe that, and they list things, and you're like, okay, actually that sounds perfect for me. So it's good that you read through the reviews, but really that's the biggest piece of help that an author can have, is to have honest reviews about their books, so they know where they're making mistakes, where they need to fix, and who their market is. Clearly some books are not meant for feminists. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And just like some mystery books are not meant for romance readers, and some science fiction are not meant for nonfiction readers.
I mean, everybody has their favorite genres, and we both have a friend who writes beautifully well. She's MJ Ferguson. I can't read her stuff. I can't. It's really scary. But I love her style of writing, and her books that aren't horror. I love to read those, but I would never read her book. So I think you just have to pick a book that's good for you.
Tell us a little bit about your upcoming book that's coming out in March.
Okay, Adriana's Avenging Angel.
Adriana's Avenging Angels, and tell us a little bit about what that book is about. And it's such a unique concept. Where did the idea for that come also?
Stacy Boyd from Harlequin Desire. If you are a writer who's looking to get published, your best friend is #MSWL. It's manuscript wish list. Stacy Boyd put down what she wanted for a story, and she wanted a darker set of characters. She wanted first-person point of view. She just listed a whole bunch of things, and I had been thinking about these characters for quite a while. I actually originally wrote the story as a mob story, Russian mafia, but they're now just vigilantes. And just the idea of, she wanted a hero that you could redeem. So, the bad guy, but he's really not all bad. He has the ability to redeem himself. So just using her guidelines, I already had a story where a woman was in a very bad situation. She's attacked by a client, And this man comes up and saves her and literally takes the bad person who was raping her away, and that person disappears. And so she doesn't know, has he killed her? Has he killed the person that attacked her? Is it going to come back to her? And then he reintroduces himself to her, and he is looking for citizenship so that he can bring his mother over from Russia. So it has the romance tropes of marriage of convenience. She gets pregnant, and then just the issues of dealing with, do you know who you've married so quickly, and where is this guy, and will he ever show up again?
Oh, it's a terrific plot. And I'm reading a book right now called The Second Life of Nick Mason by Steve Hamilton, and he's writing very much a character that needs to be redeemed. Can that character be redeemed? When I heard about the plot line for your new book, I thought, very similar.
Yes.
Can somebody with a sketchy past get redeemed? And it seems like in romance writing, especially, even in romance fiction, readers, even if they don't read a lot in that genre, root for that redemption. They want to see that person get a second chance.
You want to see somebody grow, definitely. And also, it's when somebody does something, it also depends. Well, for me, it depends on what was your goal? Why did you do it? Was it for yourself, or were you trying to make the world a better place? So it's just that idea of what can you personally accept from somebody's behavior, and can they redeem themselves?
And how much can you put up with, too, I
Yes.
think, to some degree, before
Yes.
you have just had enough.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about a couple of your other books. Lynn Song, in which we meet a character named Lynn. Her brother dies in a car accident, and another boy named Jason who never speaks to her again. Tell us a little bit about what's going on in that story.
So Jason was just starting his career as a musician, and I kind of have a soft spot in my heart for musicians because my son is very musical, and the guys come over and practice all the time. So I liked the idea of, you have this group of kids that grow up together and they do everything together, and as he gets in high school, he becomes famous, he gets this big chance, and he asks his friend, would you please go back to my house and get my guitar pick, because that's his lucky thing, his lucky object. And when his friend goes to go get the guitar pick, he dies in a car accident. And so Jason blames himself, and Lynn is his friend's brother. So he can't handle the guilt of what he's done. He's broken this family apart, and he can't handle it. And he feels it was a guitar pick, so he feels very bad that was what killed his friend. So years later, he comes back, and of course, she's never held him responsible for her brother's death because she just never did. She realized it was an accident, it was a rainy day. Her brother had been having issues with alcohol abuse, and so the fact that he was drunk and driving in the rain was what caused the accident. And so she's never blamed Jason, but he has to learn to forgive himself before he can move on. And of course, that is more of a friends to lovers scenario.
Very good. And
Yeah.
I also wanted to ask you about another book, which I'm almost through, which was just fantastic, and that was Road Trip.
Oh,
which
Good Hair
came out
Days.
in yes, which
Yeah,
came
Good
out
Hair Days.
at Good Hair Days, and I wrote Road Trip in my notes
Yeah.
because it's just great. And it came out in December of 2015. We meet a character named Paige Fitzgerald. She used to be very similar to her Aunt Mary, fun-loving, adventurous, full of life.
Yep.
But then Paige gets a surprise. What is that surprise, and what happens to her?
Okay, so this is actually based on a true story, and it is the first story that Rebecca Beret and I worked on together. I signed up to do the New York Midnight Challenge for a short story. My problem is I write thousands of words, and this had to be put down to like 5,000 words or something. So I went over to Rebecca's house and I begged her to help me fix this. The opening scene where Paige, her Grandma Mary is what she calls her, but her Aunt Mary dies, and she's left her good hair. And so she goes home, and her mother gives her this box that has the wig in it, the hairpiece, which is just a bun. And that literally happened to me. My sister Lynn found my Grandma Mary's good hair, and she sent it to me, and I opened it up one Christmas, and I'm like, oh, you did not. And you open it up, and it's a hair piece, and the kids were like, what is that? And it still smells like her. It's, and it was her good hair. It was the hair she wore for, everybody's first communions and confirmations and high school graduations and weddings. That was the good hair. She had another bun for the, everyday hair, and then sometimes she just had, but that was the good hair. So that was the big deal, is that, you knew you were ranking it. You did something good if Mary pulled out the good hair. And she is the character, and the advice that she gives is the advice that Mary would have given. And many of the stories in there are actually true stories of things Grandma Mary did. So we have a wicked sense of humor in our family, and it's definitely from Mary. Like, one of my favorites is, she actually did steal my uncle's milk truck so frequently that he had to put a lock on the garage, and she didn't get her driver's license until she was 60. So she drove illegally until she was 60, and the only reason she got her driver's license is because she wanted to get a credit card. So yeah, she was a character, and she had a love of life, a love of living in the moment, a love of, take your chances, what are you waiting for? And for Paige finds the bucket list that she had written with Mary. And so during Christmas vacation, Mary accompanies her while she fulfills this bucket list. But the point of the story is, don't have a bucket list, do it.
Yeah.
Just do it.
Just
And
do
that is very much Mary's advice to me, to our whole family.
Well,
Yeah.
it's a great story.
Yeah.
It has that National Lampoon's Clark Griswold quality to
Oh,
it.
yeah.
The humor and the
Yeah.
unforgettable personalities.
Yeah.
It's great, and
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to finishing that
Yeah.
a little bit later on. I want to ask you one more question about romance, and then I want to ask you about your writing partner, Rebecca Beret. You talked about Lynn Song being sort of a friends to romance story. We talked about the storyline coming up in Rebound Babies.
Mm-hmm.
How does a romance writer build connection between two characters that don't meet maybe until a third of the way through the book, don't meet because of circumstance? How do you develop that to where they introduce themselves and maybe they have a conversation to where they become romantically involved? How does a romance writer do that? And is that something that just develops as the plot unfolds, or do you have it in mind? I know how these two are going to ultimately, I know the event that's going to make them romantically love each other.
I think, and I think everybody writes differently. I'm sure you've heard the term plotters or pantsers. And I started off as a pantser, and my writing partner, Rebecca Beret, insisted that I go see James Scott Bell talk about plotting. And I am now a firm believer in the plot. So if you're looking at the plot and you're thinking of a book and you know who you want to get together, I actually, we sit down when we're plotting it out and we're like, okay, at the 50% part of the book, no matter how long the book is, if it's 25,000 words or if it's 80,000 words, at the 50% point, they're together, they know that they belong together. They may not stay together at that moment, but they know that if they were who they're supposed to be, the best version of themselves, they would be perfect for each other. So by the 50% point, we're there. There's also, romance has something called tropes, and there's lists of tropes all over the place. So sometimes we'll be talking about characters, and then we will look at the list of tropes and think, well, how do you want this to happen? So, marriage of convenience, the baby, secret baby, I don't know, there's literally dozens and dozens of them. So sometimes that kind of factors in there, like, oh, this is how I want them to get together. For Lynn Song, that one was definitely inspired by Adam Levine's Maps album. I just kept listening to the music and I thought, wouldn't it be interesting if, and Jason is a recurring character in that series, Love at First Sight. So I had been waiting to finish Jason's story. I needed Jason to fall in love and have his happily ever after, and I just didn't know how to do it. And so I was inspired by, oh, this is perfect for him. So I think we come up with characters. Sometimes we think of a scene. For Adriana's Avenging Angel, it was the scene. It was the scene of this really big, scary guy coming out of nowhere and saving her, and then her knowing that he's actually a good person inside, but maybe not so much on the outside. And then the two of them, coming together. And so I don't know. I think everybody does it differently, but for us, we are definitely plotters, and it makes for a much more satisfying read. I think, when you get to the end, it's less saggy.
Yeah.
There's more going on.
Understand.
Yeah.
Understand totally. You've mentioned Rebecca Beret several times, and I
Yes.
know you all are writing partners in some of your books and things that you all are
Yes.
working on. How did you two meet, and how does a writing partnership work?
I think, again, that's like saying, how does any partnership work? But we met at NaNoWriMo, and we have a very similar voice when we write. And it was definitely Good Hair Days that brought us together, because she writes the most amazing poems, 50-word stories, and they're phenomenal. And of course, I'm producing word vomit at hundreds of thousands of words, and I need to cut it down. So it just happened that with the same voice, and then I have qualities and she has qualities, and they blend together perfectly. So I cannot use a comma to save my life correctly. I can't do dialogue tags. I get stuck in plotting a lot of times. And Rebound Baby 2, she helped me a little bit with the plot for that. And then when we were talking about Rebound Babies, that plot was such a mess. And so that was one that we just sort of like rolled into, okay, this has to completely be redone. Let's do it together. And she majorly fixed it and made it a much better book. So I think she's more patient. I'm definitely impatient. I want to write it and get it out there. And she's like, whoa, I found a great cartoon of, Grog, the caveman, presenting this, rough-hewn wheel, and then the other person's got like the Goodyear tire. That's kind of how I feel. Like, I give her this lumpy piece of clay, and she makes it perfect.
Very good. Well,
Yeah.
It sounds like a great partnership, and it has led to the production of some really good works.
Yes,
And
yeah.
so congratulations to
Yeah.
both of you. So, Toby, in our final moments, if someone wants to get in contact with you about your writing, check out some of your books, how can they get in contact with you? Where can they get copies of your books?
Right now, all of my books are available on Amazon. Imperfect is available, I think, on every single format, as well as Good Hair Days, because that's through Burroughs Publishing Group. And you can contact me at tobidoyle.com or toby@tobidoyle.com. And Empire Books is kind enough to carry both Lynn Song and Imperfect right now, and hopefully they'll bring in Rebound Babies when we finally get that to press.
Great, fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, Tobi Doyle's been our guest here on Chapters today, a very accomplished writer, a member of the Romance Writers of America, an award-winning writer who is just really publishing some outstanding romance books. And if any of our audience are looking for some great romance, they need to check out what you're writing, because it's fantastic. And as someone who reads romance, but it's not a genre I actively seek out, I enjoyed it very much. And thank you, thank you for what you've done, and good luck with your new books. And as those continue to go on, and as you and Rebecca continue to write more, we'll have you back on Chapters more to talk about it. So thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much.
And we want to take a moment to say thanks to Natalie Sheets and the staff and management of Empire Books and News for providing our on-site support and assistance today. We encourage you to come down to Empire Books and News and get a couple copies of Tobi Doyle's books, as well as the other books that you've seen featured here on the program by all the authors, publishers, and editors from West Virginia, Ohio, and Kentucky that have been featured here on Chapters. We encourage you to stop by. Also remind you that Empire Books and News has the largest selection of magazines in the tri-state. So come down to Pullman Square, stop in and talk to Natalie and her staff, and they can get you taken care of with all your reading needs right here at Empire Books and News. And if you've got a question, comment, or suggestion about this Chapters program or any Chapters program that you've seen here on Armstrong Television, we'd love to hear from you. We have an email address that's right here at the bottom of the screen. We encourage you to reach out to the program through that email address. Please include your name and where you're writing from when you do correspond with us through email. That helps us get an idea of where you are and where you're writing from. So we do read those comments, so please keep them coming. We appreciate the feedback that we've received so far. And if you've missed a previous episode of Chapters, or you want to go back and see one for maybe the second or third time, that's available to you through the Armstrong One Wire page on YouTube, and that address is also here at the bottom of the screen. Once you type that into your search browser, just click on the Chapters tab, and you can go back and see over 3 years plus of author, publisher, and editor interviews right there through the Armstrong One Wire page on YouTube. And we encourage you to check out the Chapters page on Facebook. If you're on Facebook, just do a search, type in Chapters Television Show, or in fact, just type in Chapters in general, and that'll link you right to the program. You'll get to see comments and feedback from authors who have viewed previous programs. You'll see our most recent programs shared there. Plus, you'll also see some original content that you can't find on the YouTube channel. So we encourage you to check out the Facebook page of Chapters there and check out those episodes, and also leave us some comments and feedback. And we also want to remind you that Empire Books and News sponsors a Writers Can Read open mic event the third Monday of each month right here at the store from 7 until 8:30. Anyone who's interested in participating can come. It's free and open to the public. You can come as a writer with a completed work or a work in progress and share with an audience, or you can come and read a work that has inspired you along the way and get some feedback from an interested audience of readers and writers. That is the Writers Can Read open mic event, third Monday of each month, all year long, right here at Empire Books and News, starting at 7 o'clock. So we encourage you to stop by and check out that event if that might be something that you're interested in. And that's going to do it for us this time on Chapters, but please come again next time. And in the meantime, stay tuned to this station for news and views that impact you and your community.